It's time!
Get up, let me begin. This is TWSN. You ain't heard about us yet, well you better know now, because it's the place that it all goes down on.
Okay, I'm rolling with the new intro. I'm rolling with it. Okay, guys, welcome to another edition of Strikes and Submissions. Here, I'm Dorian Wright, your host. Here, my co-host, Michael Daly. How you doing today, Mike?
Dorian, I am great. So happy to be on with you. The new intro, when I heard it, I was very pleased with it, very happy, but I'm glad to have you back. So at least some things are still the same. How was your vacation in Texas?
My vacation was cool. I did some cool things out in Texas. I went tubing in a long river, long, hot day. I went to an Irish pub to watch the Conor fight, so you can imagine how that went. Yeah, had a nice time, visited some old friends. It was a good time, but let's not talk about me. I'm glad y'all held it down last week, but let's get straight to it, man. First and foremost, UFC 264, one of the most anticlimactic endings to a main event ever with the Conor and Dustin thing. But how'd you like the card overall? Let's start with the card. We don't have to get to the main event right now, but man, I'll go first. I'm not gonna lie, I thought the card was a bit underwhelming, but how about you?
I actually disagree. I don't think it was underwhelming. Was it the best card of the year? No, but I do think it was one of them because it didn't have great fights, but I think the collection of the fights that they had, to me, as a pay-per-view buyer, I felt like I got my money's worth. And that's the most important thing because I have bought cards where I have been disappointed. I have bought cards where I had low expectations and it over-delivered. This one, to me, was pretty solid. Obviously, the ending, not what everyone else had hoped for, but overall, including the production and everything else that went into it, I was very happy.
That's fair. I mean, the fights were good, I'll say, aside from the Wonderboy Burns fight, which I was wrong about. I'll get to that in a moment. But for the undercard, I'm looking now, the first fight, you had Zagas with the standing guillotine. That was nice. Brad Tavares had a scrap. I thought that was going to be arguably fight of the night. Jennifer Maya beat Jessica I. That was an fight. And then you had Trevin Giles get KO'd. Ilya Topuria, that was a crazy finish. Now Ryan Hall's just rolling all over. I'll say that's probably where you got your money's worth. Out of all the fights that were on the card, you're like, hey, what's one fight that I know is going to be interesting? That's one. Because Ryan Hall is just rolling around and he got slept. Your boy Michael Pereira had the nice little backflip that went viral and he got the nice win. We had some good fights here. Carlos Condit, Max Griffin. But for the main card, Sean O'Malley and Chris Moutinho was one of the craziest fights I've ever seen, not in a good way. How'd you think Sean looked first and foremost, and most importantly, what did you think about the stoppage?
I thought Sean did what he had to do. Immediately after the fight, people criticized him saying, oh, you should have knocked this guy out in the first round, which he almost did, by the way. But at the end of the day, Sean O'Malley fought an opponent who he didn't really prepare for, only had 10 days notice to get ready for a brand new opponent. And as it turns out, he didn't really know once he walked into that octagon what type of fighter he was going up against. It just turned out that Chris Moutinho is an absolute zombie. That's what he faced. So I think it's hard to put away a guy that is as tough as nails like Chris Moutinho is. But I'm not mad at the stoppage. People were a little bit upset about it. I know the commentary table was upset about it, but there were 30 seconds left on the clock. It seemed like from pillar to post, Sean O'Malley was just laying it on Chris, and Chris just didn't have a defense for it. Obviously, the stoppage was a little awkward, I would say. I think that's the best way to put it, because Herb Dean kind of just threw himself in there and stopped it, even though there really wasn't a shot that rocked Moutinho necessarily in that sequence. But I think it was the right call, because at the end of the day, you have to account for fighter safety and the health of the fighter, and that's what happened. So I'm not mad at it. If anything, I think Chris Moutinho, he's a warrior. I think he should thank Herb Dean, because he was just taking a lot of shots to the face, and ultimately they were unnecessary shots. And I am glad Herb Dean stepped in and stopped it.
Yeah, let's just be real. I cannot recall one time Chris Moutinho hit Sean O'Malley. Now, call it what you want. This is the UFC. Let me just put something out there for the people who had a problem with the stoppage. This isn't a regular sport. And what I mean by that is you can't just, I'm going to play and I'm going to play hard and that's all. Like, no. This is a sport you have to be very careful with. If you get kicked in the head, you may have brain damage for the rest of your life. Now, with that being said, for those who may not watch MMA very frequently, let me just tell you that again. If you get hit enough times, you will have brain damage for the rest of your life. Just for the people in the back. Now, you preface that statement with Sean O'Malley beat the brakes off of Chris Moutinho, as he should. You know, he was heavily favored. Dude's making his UFC debut. Kid's tough as nails, like you said. And I disagree with one thing you said. You said he had no defense. He did have a defense.
No, I didn't say that. I didn't say that. I said it didn't work. There's a difference, but continue.
No. The defense he had, let me tell you, he said, let me just put my head here and see if he can knock me out. That was his defense.
Okay.
He didn't put his hands up. He just kept walking through Sean O'Malley's hits. Sean O'Malley has broken hands. Both of his hands had caused him to have a medical suspension for the next 6 months. He can't fight. So when you get punched in the head, and he had some nice body shots and body kicks, but when you get hit in the head that much, that fight could have been stopped 45 seconds in. That fight could have been stopped at the end of the first round. That fight could have been stopped on the stool. That fight could have been stopped at any time. The last 30 seconds, you see Sean O'Malley just swinging for the fences. And Herb Dean standing there said, move, fighter, move. He's not moving. He's just standing there blocking punches with his head. That's not good defense. So I'm with Herb on this one, man. You got to stop the fight. Because what are we letting it go to the decision for? I think round one was a 10-8. I tweeted it out. You're going to get embarrassed on the cards. You're going to have to stand there and as he raises Sean O'Malley's hand as if anybody doesn't know he won the fight. He was doing nothing in the last 30 seconds to win that fight. So I'm okay with the stoppage, you know. And then the rest of the card, you have Aldana and Kunitska. That was a crazy fight. I didn't expect it to go that way at all. Tai Tuivasa, Greg Hardy. We said it. That's going to be a slugfest. It's not reaching the cards. What was it? A minute, 7 seconds. That was insane. Mike, would you ever do a shoey?
Funny you ask. I don't know if you caught the live show, the pre-show Saturday that we were all on, but we actually had a bet with our operations manager, Daniel Alameda, because all of us, aside from Malik didn't get in on it, but we bet that Tai Tuivasa would win. Long story short, Daniel thought Greg Hardy would win, and a shoey was on the line. But yeah, so long story short, there was a chance I almost had to do a shoey.
Oh man, so good thing your side panned out. But the last two fights on the card, obviously Gilbert Burns beat Stephen Thompson. What were your overall opinions on that fight?
A lot of people called this fight boring. I don't like calling fights boring because there's a lot that goes into it, especially a fight like this. I knew there wasn't going to be this dramatic KO finish like some people were predicting. I thought it was going to be a very tactical fight, but I thought from an offensive standpoint, especially in terms of the stand-up, I thought there would be a little bit more action because I just didn't think Gilbert Burns, although I had him winning the fight, I didn't think he'd be able to employ his wrestling and his grappling skills on Wonderboy the way he did, I thought in order for him to win, I thought he was going to have to crack Wonderboy. And he hit Wonderboy hard a few times. But there wasn't a whole lot of entertainment in the fight, which is fine. It was very tactical, like I said. It was on the ground. Gilbert Burns, I think, kept it there because he knew he had the advantage, and he cruised to the win.
Yeah, I mean, I want to issue an apology to Gilbert Burns. I'll say right now, I'm sorry, Gilbert Burns. I wrote you off. I thought Wonderboy was going to piece you up and just dance around you for 15 minutes, and boy, was I wrong. I think, yeah, like you said, it's very tactical. I think it was a tad bit underwhelming, and this is why I think the card was overall a little underwhelming, because the co-main event was like after, Tyvason knocked him out, shoeys everywhere, and we're like, oh my God, now we're about to get Wonderboy Burns, and then like it's a grappling match for 15 minutes, which we know Burns can win. And I'm not knocking him, the strategy is the strategy, win the fight at all costs. Don't stand up with Wonderboy and try to please fans like me. I'm not the person to please. You want to win the fight. But yeah, it was a tactical battle. I think takedowns and grappling ultimately just won it over. Wonderboy, I think we can carefully but also confidently say that he probably won't be getting a title shot anytime soon, probably for the remainder of his career. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see who he fights next in the division, maybe give one of the younger guys a nice name. But now, what we're all been waiting for, Conor McGregor, Dustin Poirier trilogy. How'd you like the fight? Obviously, you don't want to see it ended like that on any cases, but how'd you like the fight from a fan's perspective?
Dorian, I could sit here and talk about how Conor McGregor made the mistake of pulling guard. He made the mistake of taking the fight with stretch fractures in his leg rather, which he admitted to, and using his leg as a weapon in the fight, but I'm not going to. I'm going to talk about one word that was brought up throughout last weekend in relation to the card, and that word is fairness. Now, you're probably wondering, why am I talking about fairness? I'm going to start out with a little example from Friday, which caused some controversy, and it was when Addison Rae was interviewing Dustin Poirier in the post-weigh-in interview. A lot of people were like, why is she getting to interview Dustin Poirier? Here's the reason why, people, okay? You can have someone like me who's probably more qualified than she is to interview a UFC fighter, but the difference is no one knows who I am. She has 80 million followers. Now, let me tie it into the fight. I compare that to the outcome and the future for Conor McGregor. That's why I'm linking those two together, because let's be honest. Conor McGregor, after losing back-to-back fights to Dustin Poirier, does not deserve a fourth fight, but he will get it. You know why he's going to get it? Because he's the biggest draw the sport has ever seen. And there's a reason why, Dorian. Conor McGregor has not fought on a UFC Fight Night card or in any other pay-per-view slot other than the main event since January 2015. That's a long time to be the man, the headliner on pay-per-view cards. And that will not change. Regardless of his record, that won't change. Conor McGregor will always be in big fights just because of the cachet and the name and the draw that he is. So, look, the outcome, very unfortunate. But even if the fight would have gone on, I still think Dustin was in the driver's seat. Dustin, once Conor was not able to pull off that guillotine on the ground, the momentum, even if it was a little bit of momentum, it shifted right back to Dustin, and Dustin was in control. But looking forward, Conor, I don't think much is going to change. And you may disagree, Dorian, I don't know. But I think Conor, regardless of his record, he is still going to be a win or two away from fighting for world championships because, look, the UFC, unfortunately, is not necessarily a meritocracy. It's a business. They're about making money. Conor McGregor is still the cash cow, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, Conor McGregor is money. Let's be real. So, yeah, and like Marissa said, fights can go either way. Now, I'm glad she brought that up. I want to bring up two fighters that may have nothing to do with this. Max Holloway, Rafael dos Anjos, a.k.a. RDA. You guys might be asking, hey, what do they have to do with that? Max Holloway was set to fight on this week's Fight Night card against Yair Rodriguez. He was hurt and had to pull out of the fight, so now Islam is main eventing. We'll talk about that a little later. However, Max had offered, and according to him, it sounds like he was given the opportunity to be the backup fighter for Conor Dustin 3. Now, the magnitude of that, the fact that you would allow your headliner of a Fight Night card to be the backup fighter just a week prior is ridiculous. Now, granted, injuries happen. New backup fighter, RDA. Conor was set to fight RDA originally for the lightweight strap to move up, but RDA pulls out. Now, we all remember that. Then he ends up fighting, Nate Diaz, and the story lives on. But RDA might be the reason Conor does not get back to the gold in the lightweight division, I'll say, because they have a heated back and forth history. Is some rumors that Conor may have slapped RDA after the weigh-ins. You can kind of see it on Embedded. They got into it. Islam said Conor smacked him and RDA didn't do anything. That was kind of crazy to me. But the reason I bring them up is because Conor and Dustin 4, it might happen, but we all know that shouldn't happen. Dustin's arguably the best lightweight in the world, if not number 2 for sure. And no disrespect, but Conor's just not at that level anymore. Not saying he can't be an entertainer, can't be a cash cow, can't headline a pay-per-view, but just not against those guys. Give him big name fights now, as he gave many of people big name fights on the way up. Now, you brought up his stress fractures, Matt, and you also brought it up too, Mike. I think even if that is true, I don't take anything away from Dustin's performance. I think Dustin was getting him on the feet after the first 30 seconds. Conor came out, kick. Dustin's like, okay, that's what you want to do. Close the distance, was piecing him up. Conor's actually the one who clinched Dustin. Let's be fair. Conor clinched Dustin. Dustin takes it to the cage, takes it to the ground. Vicious ground and pound, busted open his cauliflower ear. And in fairness, Conor was giving him some shots off his back too. But Dustin, like you said, was in the driver's seat the entire time. We all know if Conor's going to win the fight, it's going to be in the first or in the second round, because he's going to have to put Dustin out. And the way that the first round went, the second round was going to go the exact same way. I don't think he would have had the energy. His arms have been a little tired after grappling. And like you said, going for a guillotine so early in the fight, that'll wear you down. You're squeezing on Dustin's neck. So as for the fight, I think I did pick Conor on the show, but if you guys follow me on Twitter, I did switch my pick last minute. I have been going back and forth. Just it's hard to take a break in this sport, come back and still beat the number 1 or the number 2 guy in the division. Like, this isn't the sport for that. There's going to be no MJ, I'm back, and then the next year win a championship for Conor. It's not going to go like that. He's missed so much time just trying to box, tried to box Manny Pacquiao, just with his business ventures, just being out of the cage. And Dustin's been active. Dustin's been fighting the best in the division. And I don't see how he closes the gap. I don't know about you, but the fourth fight, for money-wise, it may happen, but it shouldn't happen. I think it would have played out more or less the same as the first round. I think Dustin said it himself. He said, I want to see who's willing to bleed more, who's the better fighter. We know anybody can knock anybody out, but who's a better fighter? Now, Dustin, we've seen him scrap with Gaethje. We've seen arguably fight of the year with Hooker. We've seen him push Khabib and put Khabib in the most danger he's ever been in. Conor, on the other hand, all his moments that you look at as great moments happened 4, 5, 6 years ago. So it's going to be hard to bridge the gap. But I don't know if you have anything else on the card overall or the Conor fight, but didn't look too good for Conor. Hope he gets healthy. Hope he comes back, and maybe RDA might be one of the people he fights on his return fight.
I just want to say, Dorian, that although we're talking about Conor McGregor, and this will lead into our next point, you can't take away Dustin Poirier's win. You can't, and you brought it up. The one problem I have, and this hurts me to say it, if any other fighter would bring up problems they had leading into the fight, we'd kind of like, all right, cool, great. We'd kind of push them to the side and say, you still lost. But when it comes to Conor, I feel like we, as a MMA community, as a collective group, millions of people who watch the sport, we give him a pass. And I think we have to start accepting the fact that he may have lost a step or two, or he actually lost a step or two, and not allow pre-fight antics and the old Conor coming back persuade how we feel. So that's just my thought on kind of the end of the aftermath.
Yeah, and to your point, we didn't even bring up the stuff he was saying after about his wife. He's going to kill him and things like that. Like, it's terrible, but let's be honest. This is Conor McGregor we're talking about. He doesn't have the cleanest rap sheet. No. You know, he got charged for throwing a dolly through the bus trying to hurt Khabib. You know, obviously the situation, he punches an old man in the bar. So let's not act like Conor's the good guy, like he posed that before their rematch, because that's not who he is. This is the Conor who we know, and this is the Conor who we love. Let's be honest. The stuff he was saying was very foul and rude, but that's how he made his name. He told Jose Aldo he was going to ride on his favela on horseback and take over his village if this was in the older times. And that's crazy to say, but this is Conor McGregor. So I think, like you said, any other fighter, we'd be like, all right, stop making excuses. We don't want to hear it. But for McGregor, we do want to hear it because it's entertaining when he makes those excuses for whatever reason. Me personally, I'm not taking anything away from Dustin's win. I don't think it was a fluke win. I don't think, I do think even if he did have stress fractures leading up to the fight, I do think Dustin may have checked the kick with his elbow, actually the T kick with his elbow, the same kick Conor threw at the pre-fight press conference, right past Dana. Same exact kick. I think Dustin might have checked it with his elbow. So if he did have stress fractures, I think the Dustin elbow is what broke it ultimately after he rolled it, of course. The ultimate trash talker. Just because his legs broke and he's on the ground in pain, you think that's going to stop him from cutting a promo?
No.
This is Conor McGregor we're talking about. Let's be real here. So, a lot of guys we see when they break bones, they get stretchered out immediately. Conor was like, no, I'm going to sit here. I'm going to talk my talk, And it's ironic he said he was going to put Dustin out on a stretcher, and he's the one who actually went on a stretcher. So a bit of karma, like Khabib said, a bit of karma. But, moving on, let's talk about what's next for Dustin Poirier, because obviously it's Charles Oliveira. Now, Dana said it, Oliveira said it. This was the number one contender fight all along. How do you see that fight going?
I believe Dustin Poirier is the uncrowned lightweight champion, or at least he was. No longer, because obviously Charles Oliveira is. But the UFC lightweight championship fight should have been vacated after Khabib retired in October. And Poirier-McGregor 2 should have been for that vacant belt. It should not have been in May 2021. Because, in my opinion, Dustin Poirier, although he's not the actual champion, I believe right now, of everyone still active in the division, I think he's the best 155er on the planet. That's just how I feel. And that's no slight to Charles Oliveira, but I just think circumstantially, you do have to understand that Charles Oliveira, if Khabib was still there, if Conor was winning fights, if the division was still kind of normal and not shaken up so much, there's a good chance Charles Oliveira may have never fought for a title. Not saying he didn't deserve it, but I'm just saying it would have been hard for him to get to that point. Now, there's only one fight to make. And that fight is Charles Oliveira, his first title defense, have him fight Dustin Poirier. I think that is the only fight you can make right now. Who knows what's going to happen after? I don't really want to talk about that right now because we already talked about it, maybe with Conor and all that stuff. But what I think is important to remember, Dorian, is that Dustin Poirier, I think, although he may not be as skilled as a jiu-jitsu player as Charles Oliveira might be in trouble that night. You probably disagree because I know you really, really like Charles Oliveira. But Dustin Poirier, he can put it on you. And you saw what Michael Chandler did to Charles Oliveira. I think Poirier could do the same.
That's interesting. I think Michael Chandler has more power in his hands than Dustin, so that's why it looked like that. I think Dustin's more of an attrition type of fighter. You know, he has to pile it on you, a lot of combos, and yeah, like Joe said, I got Oliveira in this, and not to slight Dustin, like you said, he very may well be the best lightweight in the world until he fights Charles Oliveira, and then we're gonna start putting some respect on his name. A guy who's on a now 9-fight win streak, and 8 of those have been finishes. The only one that wasn't a finish was the Tony Ferguson fight, which could have been finished with that nasty armbar. So we're talking about a guy who's in, not only is he in his prime, but he's the most confident he's ever been. He just won a championship. Obviously, Dustin's confidence is not to be, sneezed at by any standard. But I think Charles Oliveira has him beat on the ground. I think Charles Oliveira may have him beat on the feet. I don't know. That'll be revealed when they do fight. But easily, I have this as one of my most anticipated fights of the year, and possibly will be fight of the year, because we know what Dustin's bringing. You know what Poirier's bringing to the table. He's gonna bring you a scrap. He's gonna bring you a dog fight. He's gonna stand and trade. He's gonna bang it out. And Oliveira, we know what he's gonna do too. He did it with Michael Chandler. He's going to walk him down. He's going to Muay Thai and jiu-jitsu his way to a victory, as he's done the past few years now. So I don't know if I have my prediction yet on how the fight plays out. I do think Oliveira has more streams of winning, which is why I have him winning, and just his confidence at an all-time high. He thought either I'm getting Dustin Poirier, who's I feel confident against, or I'm getting Conor McGregor, who's going to bring me the most money, who I obviously feel way more confident against. And he got Dustin, so it's time for him to strap his boots up and make the best out of his situation, which was, like you said, fighting for a vacant title. If Conor 2 was for the belt, Dustin's the champ, they're going to run that back immediately. So Charles Oliveira would have beat Michael Chandler and have been waiting. So he's the champ. Like you said, this game changes very, very, very fast. So you never know what's going to happen. But I think Oliveira has him edged out right now.
We'll see. The reason why I'm a little tentative is because Charles Oliveira, and this is not taking anything away from his win, right? But he got that spot in that vacant match against Michael Chandler after beating Tony Ferguson. And I think we can all agree Tony Ferguson was not the 2017 Tony Ferguson that was stopping Kevin Lee and was just on a tear. They were two different types of fighters. I just think Charles Oliveira, I think he earned the title shot. Not saying he didn't, but I just think in a perfect world, I don't think Charles Oliveira would be here. Not saying he doesn't deserve it, but I'm just saying in a perfect world in the lightweight division, Charles Oliveira wouldn't be here. But I'm hoping, right, and I'm sure you're the same way, I'm hoping before year's end in 2021, we get this fight.
Oh, yeah, I need this fight expeditiously.
Yeah.
Because Oliveira, he's been active. Dustin's been active. Let's keep these guys active. No need to give them 6-7 months off. Speaking of giving lightweight 6-7 months off, where's Justin Gaethje? Is he going to fight Michael Chandler or not? Because that's obviously the fight to make. Everybody wants to see it. Beneil Dariush and Gaethje are friends, so I don't think they'll fight unless they have to. But Gaethje fought Khabib in October. October's rolling right back around. Like, you see how he just got cut out the cards. It just wasn't in the cards for him, and he hasn't fought in 9-10 months. It's about to be. So this is why you keep him active, man. Don't push this off to 2022. Just December. If Usman Colby or Usman Edwards isn't in December, make them December. If Francis and Cyril or Francis and Derek Lewis isn't in December, make them December. Like, we can have both fights on the card, have all three on the card, have the biggest fight for Christmas. Do what you have to do, but make that fight happen this year. 100%. I agree with you.
Can I just say something quickly about Justin Gaethje? I don't like what has happened to him. You know what? And I'm going to say another thing too, because a lot of people forget Dustin Poirier, Conor McGregor were never supposed to fight for a second time. People always forget that. They were supposed to have a charity boxing match in the UK somewhere, but the UFC said, you know what? Don't do that. Fight in our promotion. So they did. But Justin Gaethje should have fought for the vacant belt. And I know we haven't talked about him a lot, and it's unfortunate because he's just been kind of put to the wayside. But if you're Justin Gaethje, May 2020, you win the interim belt. October 2020, you try to unify the belt to become the undisputed 155-pound champion, and you lose to arguably the greatest of all time. Not just lightweight GOAT, but one of the greats to ever step in a mixed martial arts cage. And then you're just automatically just tossed to the side. Meanwhile, Dustin Poirier eventually will probably get back to that point. Justin Gaethje, it's not looking like it. I just don't think it's fair how Justin Gaethje has been pushed to the side. And Dorian, I am hoping Justin Gaethje fights the winner of Charles Oliveira, Dustin Poirier, if that fight even happens. But I'm hoping there is some sort of way that Justin Gaethje is able to get back into the fold, even if he has to fight Michael Chandler.
Okay, so I was going to say, do you think they'd hold him out until the winner? Or do you think they'll have him fight Michael Chandler, and if he wins, he gets the shot? Or if Michael Chandler – because it's tricky now, because instead of making the belt Dustin Conor 2, they vacated it. And now Dustin wins, and it's like, okay, Dustin has beaten everybody else in the division. Like, how is he not the number one contender? But Dustin takes a trilogy fight instead of the title. Now you have two guys who only one really deserves the title. No slight to Michael Chandler, but he didn't put his work in the UFC. Mm-hmm. But now if Chandler wasn't there, it would have been Oliveira Gaethje. And that would be an amazing fight to see. I would love to see that fight. I mean, Gaethje against anybody is an amazing fight. Let's be real.
You can't go wrong.
Instead, since Dustin takes the trilogy now, Justin, who is he supposed to fight? He can't fight Chandler to get back to the belt. And Chandler's fighting Oliveira, and so many dominoes. And now Beneil's in the top 5, and Conor and Tony drop out. And who's there for Justin to fight? So I don't know. I agree with you. I don't like the way that they're doing him. I hope that they can get the Chandler fight signed soon. Hopefully that's before year's end, because we don't want Gaethje, who's active in his prime, to have over a year off. Again, we say the same thing with Conor. We don't want Conor to take a year off. He has to because of rehab. He might have taken the Dustin fight too short because they fought in January. He wants the trilogy, boom, July 10th. That's only 6 months. You don't have time to really heal your body, learn new techniques, learn new things. So Justin Gaethje's had plenty of time to heal and learn techniques. Let's get him a fight. I don't know what the holdup is. I don't know whose side it is. I don't know if Chandler's even the fight that they're trying to make. Dana said so. Gaethje said so. But one fight I do know that they were trying to make and has been made, Nick Diaz, Robbie Lawler 2. Now, this got me hype when I saw it announced, when I heard it was rumored. I know you're hyped. Just a little backstory for some MMA fans, if you're newer or just younger, they did fight, what was it, 10 years ago? And it was more than 10 years ago.
2004.
Oh my God.
Yeah, over 17 years.
So they fought in 2004, back in the ancient days before, technology as we know it. And Diaz slept him bad. One of the craziest highlights you'll ever see. Lawler still and just falls flat on his face. And Diaz is still swinging at him as the ref's in between. Like, it was a crazy fight. Nick Diaz, Stockton boy. We love the Diaz brothers. I love Nick just as much as I love Nate. How do you see this fight turning out? Because we have it at 266 now. This is only a month or so away, month and a half away. UFC 266. So who do you have in this fight, and how do you like the announcement overall?
I don't think you can ever go wrong with Nick Diaz coming back to the octagon. I will say I kind of wish it was much sooner, because I don't like anybody returning after more than 5 years. And we may even talk about Miesha Tate. I don't know if we have time. But to me, that's in the same ballpark as Miesha Tate. Nick Diaz last fought February 2015 against Anderson Silva. Hasn't fought since. It felt like he was going to retire, or should have. But if you're going to ask me right now who I favor Robbie Lawler. And the reason why is activity. Robbie Lawler hasn't looked great, but I think it's because he's older. But this is a perfect fight, because to me, this is like a legacy fight. I compare this, versus with Timbaland and Swizz Beatz, how they're bringing back a lot of legacy acts and having them go up against each other. This is like a versus. You're having two guys who are not in their prime, but they're pretty close to one another in terms of skill set. I understand why it was a 5-round fight, because the Diaz boys, they know how to work that cardio and they know how to stay in a fight. That's going to be an interesting dynamic. And also, look, the UFC, like I said earlier, it's a business. They're in the business of making money and selling pay-per-views and tickets, getting fannies and seats. That's a great way to do it, by bringing in a rivalry. They fought April 2004. Robbie Lawler, he's a monster. He wants some retribution. Nick Diaz, whenever he fights, just by his antics in the octagon, it's a show. So I think this is a great job on the UFC's part, and it helps bolster a card that I personally think needed some help. So I'm not mad at it whatsoever.
Yeah, and like you said, that was going to be my first point. It's crazy to think that a card with 2 title fights is going to need some help. Like, we have Volkanovski, Ortega, and then now recently announced Shevchenko versus Lauren Murphy. Those are 2 title fights, but the fighters in there aren't the biggest of draws for a pay-per-view card. Yeah. So let's bring in a huge draw. Let's bring in Nick Diaz. He's returning after 5 years, like you said, against Robbie Lawler, a dude who he's beat before. Like you said, Robbie Lawler, hey, yeah, I'll take the rematch. I want that L back off my record. Try to even the score. Nick Diaz, oh, thank God he didn't have to come back against Khamzat Chimaev and have to deal with a young stud in his prime or something like that. We got 2 older guys, Robbie Lawler, Nick Diaz now, and I'm hype, because this is the fight that everyone wants to see. We all want to see 2 guys who are going to stand and scrap, and I think that the best 2 scrappers in the game, or arguably 2 of the best scrappers in the game, Robbie Lawler's top 3 for sure. We know what he's done against Rory McDonald. We've known the type of brawls he's been in. Nick Diaz, always down for a scrap. Diaz boys, and I'm glad you brought up the fact, I almost forgot to mention, it's 5 rounds. Mm-hmm. Nick's not trying to come back in 15 minutes in and, okay, I felt great, maybe next time 5. No. Nick's coming back this time 5 rounds after the extreme layoff. Similar to Miesha Tate, we'll get to that in a second, but that's a bold move. But the Diaz brothers, man, they're triathletes. Their cardio is never to be questioned, but I think Robbie Lawler's cardio is going to be questioned because we saw Neil Magny wear him out in his last fight. So, if Neil Magny can do it, Nick Diaz can absolutely do it. And I don't know if we're doing predictions. You picked Lawler just based off the layoff. I don't agree. I think Nick Diaz comes back in a big way. He just saw his little brother lose. Both Diaz boys can't lose back-to-back fights. You got to keep the train rolling. It's the Diaz army. So I don't know, man. I have Nick in this, my early prediction.
That's fair. And look, it's 2 months out. That my prediction could change. But the reason why I am going with Robbie, one, it's because of he hasn't had as much of a layoff. And two, if you think about it, his last 5-round, it wouldn't be a main event, but in that case, it would be a main event in August 2019. He's fought 5 rounds in the last few years, and it was against Colby Covington. So I just think that he's prepared for this fight, and he's taken his lumps recently, hasn't looked great. But I just think you can't come away from the sport of mixed martial arts 6.5 years, not just 6 years, over 6.5 years between fights and expect just to roll through Robbie Lawler. And I know you're not saying he will, but I just think this will be a very, very tough fight for Nick Diaz to win. But look, his brother had a long layoff as well and nearly pulled off the miracle of the decade against Leon Edwards. So whenever the Diaz brothers are fighting, you can't count them out. And I think if it's going to go in anyone's favor that it's a 5-round fight, it's Nick Diaz.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, like you said, the layoff is a bit concerning. I would literally say for anybody else except the Diaz boys, because I know that they've been still training. I know Nick's still been training. So am I worried about the layoff? No, only because he signed for a 5-round fight. So if he was worried about his cardio or ring rust or anything, he has a couple rounds to get it out the way. And those last 3 rounds, he got to win. So I think it's also good that he's coming back against Robbie Lawler. Like you said, he's on a 4-fight skid. He hasn't won since July of 2017 when he beat Cowboy after being knocked out by T Wood for the belt. But I think this is the way of the UFC saying, "Hey, Robbie, this is going to be your send-off fight, possibly. We'll give you a chance to get one back off your record against Nick Diaz. You'll have huge eyes on the card. You'll get a lot of promotional. You can build your brand during the lead up of the fight. If you don't win, they're going to let him go. Let's be real. So and we know the Diaz brothers, no matter how many fights they lose in a row, they're not getting let go because unless they retire. But I think that with Robbie, if he looks good and he beats Nick, maybe he calls out Nate, and that could be a great fight or something like that. So, but if Nick Diaz beats him, as I suspect he will, I think Robbie Lawler, that'll be his send-off, and we'll have a nice little segment for him here as we did for Paul Felder. And, we'll recap some of his greatest moments. But yeah, aside from that, man, I'm just hyped to see Nick Diaz back. I don't know about you.
How can you not be excited to see one of the best trash talkers in MMA history? And I remember their first fight. A lot of people may not remember this, but Nick Diaz slapped Robbie Lawler and then was just screaming at Robbie Lawler the whole fight. And that, in a way, kind of created the legend of the Diaz brothers. And eventually, Nathan Diaz kind of fell into the mix. And then it just, I don't want to say went downhill. If anything, it went uphill. But that's really the fight that started the fanfare with the Diaz brothers. A lot of people don't know that. But that was a paramount fight in Nick Diaz's legacy.
A Stockton slap,
yep.
is what they call it. But yeah, man, I think that'll be a great fight for both guys. It'll get Nick's feet wet. So if he does want to do it again, he has a comparable opponent. They're not coming back and giving him the top of the elite division, So I think that's a good step for both fighters here. But last but certainly not least, because this is what I'm most excited for now, because this weekend you have Islam Makhachev and Thiago Moises headlining UFC Fight Night. Obviously, as we stated earlier, Max and Yair were supposed to headline, got pulled. So now Islam's fighting 5 rounds. I know Islam has the hype train behind him. I don't even call it a hype train. It's Khabib. He has, like you said, one of the greatest ever behind him saying, this guy's up next. You have no choice but to believe him. And if you don't believe him, he's won 7 straight. Like, I don't know how many more people he has to beat before we start talking about him challenging for the belt. But let's start off with the co-main. Like you said, Miesha Tate's off the return. Marion, now, I think this is going to be a good fight, not only because we want to see Miesha Tate back. I think this is going to be a good fight because both of these women here aren't at the greatest stages of their career, you know. Marion's lost her last 4. Miesha Tate obviously retired, you know, had a kid, came back. But let's be real. She lost her last 2. You know, you get beat by Amanda Nunes, no sweat off your back. But Raquel Pennington actually beat her after that and then basically sent her into retirement. I think I'm rolling with Miesha Tate on this one, just off the sole fact that the layoff, I think, might have done her well because, you know, she had a kid. You know, with women in sports, it's a little different. When you get pregnant, you have a kid, you can't train, you know, stuff like that. But she's been in the gym for a while. She looks good. You know, she said she's ready to go. She said she could do 5 rounds if they asked her to. But I got Miesha Tate in this one.
This is a hard one to really analyze and dig deep on because Miesha Tate, out 5 years. She hasn't fought since UFC 200. And that's never a great thing. That's never really a great sign to look at. But I will say, if there's anyone that Miesha Tate will get a return win against after 5 years, I think it's Marion Reneau. Because Reneau struggled against Macy Chiasson in March. And I just think Reneau is skidding right now. She's struggling, hasn't looked great. To me, this is really a pick'em fight. And I believe in terms of the odds, I could be wrong, but I think Miesha Tate's the favorite. Don't know if I agree with that because I'm going to pick Marion Reneau just for the simple fact that she's been in the octagon. And you could say I'm going off the same argument that I went with for Robbie Lawler and Nick Diaz, which I am, but I do think this fight will be very close. It's just hard for me, though, to pick somebody who chose to leave the sport. When they left the sport, they were on a skid after being the champion. That's a hard pill to swallow as well. And also, Miesha Tate was the vice president of one championship. So she's been around the sport, but she's had a different career made. And now she's going back into a rugged game in mixed martial arts. I'm not saying she's not ready for it or prepared for it, because obviously she is a pioneer in the women's mixed martial arts landscape. You have to give her credit for that. But look, I just think at this moment in time, it's past her. And I believe she wants to fight beyond this. I don't think it's just going to be a one and done. But this is a tough sell for me as someone who has supported Miesha Tate throughout the years and has been a big fan of hers. It's hard for me to really get on board and say, all right, she's going to win this fight.
Yeah, I mean, I can definitely see where you're coming from. I did look it up. She is the favorite. She's a minus 144, and Marion's a plus 118. So if you want to put your money where your mouth is, you might be able to make a nice little penny there. But yeah, I think I agree with everything that you said, you know, all factual information. How could I not? But I think it's a confidence thing sometimes with fighters. And, you know, like you said, being the champ and then losing on a skid, it can hurt your pride. You know, we saw Ronda Rousey, who's one of the greatest ever, male or female. She lost the belt and, you know, she's on Ellen crying like, oh my God, like she was, having really dark thoughts and things like that. So it does take a toll on you. But what I will say is she may have needed this layoff, had a kid, has a new perspective on life as a mother now. I'm sure she's a lot tougher now, having to deal with a baby all the time. It'll make you tough. It'll make you want to go in the gym and punch somebody in the face, dealing with a crying baby all day. So she's been in the gym, taking her frustrations out on her training partners. And I think she's going to take out more frustrations on Marion this coming Saturday.
One thing, Dorian, sorry to cut you off. One thing that I think is going to help her is that she has Eric Nixick in her corner. If I'm ever picking a fight and I'm picking against a fighter who is being trained by Eric Nixick, I grimace because that guy might be trainer of the year. That's how good he is as a trainer. So let's not get it mistaken here. Miesha Tate will come prepared.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I think not for nothing, but this may be her last chance. If she loses, like you said, she wants to continue fighting after this. She did say that in the pre-fight. But if she loses, it's going to be hard to keep her around, at least fighting in a co-main event slot. She wants to, obviously, she's Miesha Tate. She's, like I said, one of the pioneers of women's MMA. And I think she became a real fan favorite with the Ronda Rousey Ultimate Fighter. But I think ultimately, if she has all the pressure on her, if she doesn't win, she may not have a job to come back to. May have to go to one championship if she wants to fight. But speaking of fighters, man, you want to talk about a fighter? I'm coming around on Islam. I'm not gonna lie. You guys have gotten to me. I've been doing my research.
Finally.
I've been hearing all the great things that have been said. And Thiago Moises is no slouch. Let's be real. He might not be a ranked guy, but he's no slouch. That division is arguably the deepest in the sport, if not. But I got Islam. I think this is going to get ugly. I think it has to get ugly for Islam. I think if he wants to be talked about as, not just the guy Khabib's backing and make his own name for himself, he has to, as he has the spotlight on ESPN, he has to put a beating on Thiago Moises for all 5 rounds. He cannot make this look like it's close. He can't get caught in a submission and say, oh, he caught me. He can't get caught with a hook and, oh, he caught me. He needs to make this a statement victory. This is, for me, very similar to Leon Edwards, Nate Diaz. Everyone expected Leon to win, but he had to beat Nate badly to make a statement to get that title shot. He beat him badly, but probably not bad enough with the ending sequence. Looks like Colby's going to get the next nod. I think if Islam wants to put his name in the top 5 and start top 10 and start really working towards a title fight within the next year or so, he has to make Thiago Moises look bad. And I think he will. But I don't know. Give me your thoughts on this one. How do you think this is going to go?
The key word leading to this fight is a convincing win for Islam Makhachev. Convincing. He has to go out there and put on a show like he did against Drew Dober. Now, it's no easy task, and a shameless plug here, I wrote an article that was published today on Thiago Moises, and I wrote about how Moises is no slouch, and you cannot overlook Thiago Moises in this fight. And you know what, Dorian? You have to give him credit, because when all of these other lightweights were turning down a fight with Islam Makhachev, he was the one who answered the call and agreed to the fight. If I'm looking at that and I take that into account, you have to put some stock into Thiago Moises, because it shows that he believes in himself. Now, that only gets you so far, but he also understands the amount of pressure that is riding on Islam Makhachev. And Khabib even talked about it, because Khabib did an interview recently, and he said how his father's plan was for Khabib to retire, but wait until Islam was in the top 3 at 155. Unfortunately for that plan, Islam's in the top 10, not in the top 3, but with a convincing win on Saturday night, there's a very good chance that Islam could get there. Now, in terms of my predictions, I am so glad, Dorian, you finally are on the train because I've been saying it for a while. I know Malik Wright's been saying it. Nader Asaf has been saying it as well. Islam Makhachev, to me, maybe not in terms of grappling, but striking and everywhere else that involves a fight, he might be better than Khabib. He just hasn't shown it yet. And that may be crazy to say, may be crazy for someone to think about. But Islam Makhachev, if he is given the opportunity, I think he will roll through the division and become champion. I'm not putting a timetable on it because Lord knows the lightweight division is just in shambles right now in terms of the top tier and who's going to fight who. But as long as Islam keeps winning fights, I think he will have a solid shot to eventually become the champion. This is very similar to Khabib's journey because if you remember, Khabib was the boogeyman. Khabib was a guy. A lot of people didn't want to fight him. You just said it. A lot of people were ducking him. They were kind of getting out of the way because it was a tough fight, but he just didn't have the name at that time to make it worth it. Right now, it's pretty close to what Islam's going through. An extremely tough fighter, might be one of the best, but that ranking isn't high enough to agree to a fight. So I don't know. I don't think Rafael Dos Anjos, if Islam wins this fight, I don't think Rafael Dos Anjos will agree to that fight like he did back in November. I just think at this point in time, 8 months removed, they're at different points in their careers. And Islam, if he wins this fight, he's shooting towards a title shot in the distant future.
Yeah, and it's funny you brought him up because if you want to do a little MMA math, so obviously Khabib is his mentor's big brother, if you'd say. So start with Thiago Moises, right? He beat Michael Johnson, who I have high respects for. He has some of the craziest fights gone his way and against him. So he beats Michael Johnson. He submits him to start his little let me not put that down. His 3-fight win streak, which got him an Islam fight. Not for nothing, it's ironic you brought it up because people were ducking Khabib the same way as they're now ducking Islam. Michael Johnson, if you remember, knocks out Dustin Poirier. His very next fight, Khabib was supposed to fight, I believe, Eddie Alvarez for the title. Or he was supposed to fight someone for the title. Didn't end up happening. Conor McGregor's fighting Eddie Alvarez for the lightweight title. Khabib's like, fam, I've beaten everybody you've put in front of me. Just because these big name guys don't want to fight me doesn't mean anything. But he says, get me on that Conor card and give me Michael Johnson. And you saw the beating Khabib put on Michael Johnson. He's talking to him the whole time, and that was the reason, some backstory for those who may have seen Khabib, having him tied on the ground, punching him. I deserve the fight for title. You know this. Boom, boom, boom. You have to give up. You have to give up now. You know I deserve this. He was saying that because Conor got the lightweight strap fight just based off of star power as opposed to winning fights. So, like you said, father's plan was Khabib to retire, Islam to be next up and fight for the belt. Bit behind, but if he has a dominant performance, those top guys won't be able to duck him anymore because now he's a main event fighter. So he's getting that level of celebrity that he needs. And not for nothing, Thiago Moises has his work cut out for him because Islam's trying to make a statement. And if Thiago Moises beats Islam, now we're talking they might drop Islam out the rankings maybe.
It's over.
Yeah, like his title hopes will be in the trash if he loses this fight or doesn't win convincingly, at least for the next year or so, because we know Gaethje's there, we know Poirier's there, and we know Dariush is almost there. He's in that top 3 now. So those 3 guys are going to be fighting for the strap next. Islam has to be winning fights throughout that time to make sure he's next in line. And if he loses this fight, it won't happen. Maybe ever.
I think if Thiago Moises finds a way to beat Islam Makhachev, he steals all of the momentum, all of the shine, might even take his spot in the rankings, might move up from 14 to 9. I will say this, though. This is Thiago Moises' toughest test of his career. And we can't discount that because that is how good Islam Makhachev is. Islam is that good, and he's trending in the right direction, but there is so much pressure falling on him for this fight. And I think one negative part to this fight is that when they agreed to it, it was only supposed to be a 3-rounder. But
Right.
when Max and Yair, that fight pulled out, Max Holloway, Yair Rodriguez was no more, then they were slotted up. And also, Dorian, you know what? A little bit off topic here, but it just came to, and it's bothering me. How was Max Holloway not able to fight on July 17th, but he was a contender to be the backup fighter for last weekend's main event? How does that make sense?
It doesn't.
I don't get it. But anyway, like, so with that being said, they agreed to a 3-round fight, pushed up to a 5-round main event. There's a lot of pressure here and a lot to build up. Thiago Moises, one thing I like that he said, he has been envisioning seeing Khabib stand across from him before the fight because he said he has to envision it because if not, he will be nervous. But since he's envisioning it, he'll be more comfortable with it and he'll know the reality standing across from one of the greatest fighters of all time who's training his best friend to destroy you. That's a tough pill to swallow, but luckily for Thiago Moises, he has prepared himself.
Yeah, and I that's interesting you brought that up because I saw he said that and I thought about it, I'm like, Khabib's not fighting you. What are you worried about him for? But then I'm thinking Islam is built up as Khabib 2.0.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking at the odds right now. On some sports books, he's a minus 850 favorite over Thiago. That's insanity. And other sports books I'm seeing as low as minus 650. I haven't seen anything lower than that. You're expected to get beat, Thiago. And if you go out and get beat, let's be real. No one will say, "Oh, he's a scrub. He's not good." Like that. You're expected to get beat. Everyone's betting their money on Islam. That's what the odds mean. Everyone's betting their money on him. So you go in, you steal the show. You might be able to call Khabib out. You're not going to get the fight, but it'll build your celebrity because you're on a main event. You have 5 rounds to showcase your skills and your talents and everything you've been working on your entire life. And it's not Khabib that you're fighting, but it's Khabib that can give you that rub that you need to get one of those higher ranked guys to get you that level of celebrity. So now you can start calling your shots. And I think it wasn't a shameless plug that you plugged your article there. And if it is, I'll shamelessly plug. I wrote an article recently about how I think grappling is taking over MMA and all these guys who are only known for their right hand or an overhand or striking or kicks, they better be ready to wrestle. And they better be ready for those Dagestanians like Khabib, like Islam, because they're coming and they're not here to strike with you. They're not. They're going to take you down. They're going to beat your face in and they're going to go back to their stool and then they're going to repeat. And it's the same every time. They have the same game plan, same. Doesn't matter who you're fighting. Doesn't matter who steps in late notice. Doesn't matter if it's 3 rounds or 5 rounds. Grapplers are coming. MMA world, be on the lookout. I don't know about you, man, but aside from that, I saw some news that Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury got pushed back. Obviously, Fury caught COVID, and it's being pushed back to October 8th. I don't know if you have any quick thoughts on that before we head out, but that's not too far away. October's right around the corner. It's my birthday month, so I'm going to keep saying that October is not too far away, guys.
It'll be here before you know it. And it's one of those fights that I am glad it's happening. I wish it was happening 9 days from now as opposed to less than 3 months from now. But look, if we get the trilogy, I won't be mad at it. I'll be happy because it's about time that the heavyweight division gets ironed out. because boxing with the politics, it's gotten too muddy. And I just honestly think, Dorian, fans, although they're happy with this fight beforehand, before the trilogy was signed, sealed, and almost delivered, they wanted to see Fury and Joshua, but they were robbed of it. If Tyson Fury wins and Joshua takes care of his business against Alexander Usyk in September, fans may get that. So hopefully this fight brings some clarity.
Yeah, hopefully. It's on my birthday week too, so I'll be enjoying that somewhere on an island, hopefully. But other than that, man, make sure you guys follow the Right Way Sports Network on Instagram, Twitter, subscribe to us on YouTube, download the TWSM mobile app, follow me here at Wright _ Mike. Other than that, we out. #no decisions.